So today I want to talk to you about communication, which I think is the key to a productive relationship between an assistant and their executive. Specifically, I want to talk to you about effective communication and what that actually means for assistants and what impact it will have if you can master the skill on your time and your productivity. I often see on job descriptions for assistants that a required skill is effective communication. And I also see that phrase on CVs and LinkedIn profiles. In fact, I actually have that on my CV. But what are the skills and personality traits behind that statement? In the next 20 minutes, we are going to break this down so that when we think about ourselves as effective communicators, we will know the procedures, the thought processes behind this invaluable skill. Before we go ahead, it's worth noting that communicating is something that we do instinctively. It's something that we often do without much thought. It may seem second nature, and we may think that we are communicating our message and getting people to listen, but actually effective communication at work takes a lot of practice and it requires a lot of thought. Choosing the right words and the right tone, proactively listening, and really truly getting our message across are skills that we need to continue to finesse. At home or in social settings, it's common to miscommunicate and misunderstand what's being said. Arguments can ensue, and a lot of time is spent saying, I didn't actually mean that. And then what normally happens is a kind of cooling off period and then a making up process. At work, the repercussions of a situation like that can be much worse, particularly when the message isn't well received. So we really do need to be effective communicators. And if we work really hard to get our communication style right, especially with our executives, the rewards are huge. So let's have a look at how effective communication fits into the role of an assistant and how it can also help the relationship with your executive. But before I start, I want to say one thing, which I'm going to come back to at the end, and it's this. You have the right to communicate with your executive. You need to communicate with them on a regular basis to be successful within your role. It is the fundamental requirement that will make your partnership successful. So if you are ever struggling to get time with your executive, I really hope that these steps will help you force that conversation and address the issue. Okay, so let's get started by looking at the messages you are trying to convey. Before attempting any type of communication, you need to think about the message you are trying to convey. This is the fundamental aspect of effective communication. You need to organise what you want to say and you need to stick to your key points. This is called communicating with purpose, and it's something that all effective communicators do. If you can master this, then your productivity will skyrocket, and actually so will that of your executives. So communicating with purpose means that you have to ask yourself all the time, is my message clear? Am I making my point clearly? To do this, you need to think about the specifics of your message. What is the objective of this particular communication, and what do you want it to achieve? Okay, so let's have a look at an everyday example for assistants, and it's a pretty basic one, but it expresses my point. So let's say you need your executive to sign off the final details of their business trip before the price of the flights go up. You have a specific deadline that you need to hit. So instead of saying that you need them to sign off the trip, say next week or this week, you should actually give a specific time and date with a deadline so that you are clearly communicating this is a priority to you. And actually, the decision that they need to make is a priority for them as well. So, as I said, this is like an everyday occurrence, right? But you'll be surprised how many assistants do not actually hit their boss with specific deadlines because, well, they're the boss. And we think because they're maybe more senior, we shouldn't tell them what we need from them, because normally it's the other way around, right? But actually, most executives prefer specifics. And for us, we have to achieve what we need without having to chase or delay any tasks. So if these regular kind of things crop up, say in your one-to-one meetings, then make sure that you write your key points down so that you can refer to the piece of paper. If, and this is actually often the case in one-to-ones, if the topic runs away with you or you feel you need to bring the conversation back to the message that you want to convey and the points that you want to make. And actually, sticking to your key message should be used in all forms of communication. That's email, WhatsApp messages, and face-to-face interaction too. This is communicating with purpose, and it will not only help you be more efficient and effective, actually communicating with purpose also makes you look much more confident because you're not umming and ahhing and not quite sure what you want to say. So looking more confident is kind of a double win. It's also worth taking the time to organise your messages. So you should be editing yourself as you would, say, any of your executives' written communications. And I have a great structure that you can use when communicating with your executive or actually anybody about a project or a task or something where you need to set some deadlines and get some help. And this is these 3 questions. Where are we? Where are we going? And how do we get there? So this is a great way to organise all of the communications you have to have around your workload and tasks. Before any communication that is planned, spend some time looking at the status of all of your tasks. If we take our business trip example, the conversation would go something like this. Your executive would say, "Where are we with the trip to New York?" You would reply, "I have finalised all of the travel arrangements. We are ready to go on everything. I need you to sign off the details by Friday so that I can book the flights before the prices go up." Now, if anything needs to happen before you can confirm the flights, you can put a plan in place to get those final details completed before Friday. So organise your thoughts in this way with any task that comes up and before a meeting to make sure you have each of these details in place so that you can then provide an update on any task or project. And it's always worth saying, if any of the messages that you have to convey are a problem or a challenge for you or for your executive or the business, then always make sure that you come with a solution. Once you start to look at how to structure your message so that they have purpose, it will be much easier to be clear and articulate. And this is so important because an effective communicator has the appearance of somebody that is confident and knowledgeable and knows exactly what they want and what they're saying, rather than somebody who mumbles and is not concise. And as we all know, and it's a habit that most of us have, if you throw in some ums and ahs, we often appear uncertain of our thoughts. Now, I want to share a great communication method that Janine Roberts talked about at our Future Assistant conference earlier this year, which will really help you articulate any point that you want to make. It's incredibly powerful, and I'd recommend you use this technique every time you want to emphasise your message.
With a pencil in the room, PEP, P-E-P. When you are communicating, what is the point that you are trying to make? Elaborate that point and close with that point. So an example might be, the point I'd like to make is, there is a storm coming. I'm going to elaborate on that by saying, if you look at the clouds in the sky, the temperature's dropped and the wind has got up. There's a storm coming. You think about that in some of the work that you're doing. If you want to impart information or you want something from somebody, okay, the point you might want to make might be, I'm really concerned that we're going in the wrong direction here with this conversation. For example, Johnny's talking about this, Rona's talking about that, and Simon seems to be disengaged. So I'm really worried that we're going in the wrong direction with this conversation. PEP, P-E-P, point.
I don't want to spend too much time on your communication style because there are so many great experts in this area that will really help you define your communication style. But I do want to say, be aware of how you come across to others, and this includes your approach, your tone, your voice, how you use it, and of course your body language. Remember, body language is so unbelievably powerful, and unless your body language matches the message that you're trying to convey, Literally, no one will be listening to the words coming out of your mouth because they will already have processed the message that is being made by your body. I would definitely recommend that you spend time studying your communication style. It's really important to know your own strengths and weaknesses and how you prefer to communicate and how your communication style works in different settings. I think self-awareness is such a strong skill for assistants to have because once you know how to deal with, say, stress or nerves or excitement, you can adjust and adapt your body language, your tone and approach to make the most out of that situation. What I would also say in terms of communication styles is also be aware of other people's non-verbal cues. A great skill that a lot of top personal assistants have is intuition, and this comes from really studying the people that they work with. When you're talking to your boss, tune into their non-verbal communications. What kind of hand gestures do they make? Do they typically fold their arms? Do they use these mannerisms when speaking to other colleagues? Many times people read into their boss's body language and assume that it's a direct reflection of their performance, but it might actually just be how they process information or react with interest. I, for example, used to have a boss that used to sit back and fold his arms like this when I was talking to him, and I was like, he is not listening to me at all. But then I realised he did that in all his meetings with everybody, and actually it was the complete opposite. It was like, okay, I'm listening, you tell me what you want. It wasn't a passive aggressive thing, which I kind of thought that it was. It was I'm relaxed, I'm listening. It is so important to be aware of others' communication style, particularly for assistants, as we deal with all types of people, from clients to senior members of staff. We also have to adjust our style so that we reflect the needs of the audience that we are addressing. Let's concentrate on how we can adapt our communication style to suit our executives. Firstly, you've got to acknowledge your executive's personality. The only way you're going to understand their personality on the level that you need to be successful within your role is to get to know them. That might not always be the easiest thing, but it's really, really important. So spend time with them, study their work style and what drives them personally and professionally. The very best way to do this, I think, is through a DISC assessment, which is short for dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientiousness. Now, there are loads of personality tests out there, and the majority are designed to help you increase your self-knowledge by highlighting how you respond to conflict, what motivates you, what causes you stress, and how you solve problems. So doing something like this, and as I said, there are a ton of them. Whatever one you pick is well worth doing. It's a great way to learn more about your communication style. And if your executive has done one of these before, it's also really good for you to see the results so that you can understand their communication style. What I would say is study the results and adapt your approach depending on their needs. If they haven't done anything like this, then suggest that the two of you do one together, because it really will help you alter your communication style so that you're both on the same page. It's always worth thinking about the position that your executive is in. Are they the CEO? Are they the CFO? Are they head of, say, IT or strategy, or are they the director of HR, for example? If, for example, they are the CFO, head of strategy, then the case is probably going to be that they are data-driven. They want to know key facts, the bottom line. Their brain works in a way that they need strategy, they need stats, they need numbers. They're going to be analytical, and you're going to need to adapt your style so that you are working in the way that they need and how their brain works. Obviously, I'm stereotyping a bit, but if you work for the head of HR, communications, marketing, you're probably going to need to adjust your style to be much more conversational, and you're probably going to need some more interpersonal skills. They might want to discuss the project in more detail and more using more words than somebody who is much more strategy, numbers focused. Obviously, I'm stereotyping, but my point is that you need to work out how your boss communicates and the best way to communicate with them and adapt your style accordingly. Think about the key driving factors behind your boss's decision-making process and where you fit within that process. How are you providing information and how are you communicating to reflect their personality? Again, if you don't know this, you're going to have to spend time studying your executive. Spend time with them and note anything that will give you a window into how they might prefer to communicate. Now again, I have a great example of this from one of the brightest executive assistants that I know that I want to share with you. This is from Emma Kiernan-Staines, who spoke at the June Summit and last year's Summit. She's got a great example of how this communication works.
So I go in with my action, signing, invites and information only. And then worst case scenario, and this happens often, my half an hour is sort of then quite tiny, and I might only have 10 minutes with her. Well, if I've only got 10 minutes with her, I need to attack this, this, and this, and that's it. Because she's not going to have the headspace for anything else. That is never going to work. That's never going to land. She doesn't even care about that other stuff. But this stuff, I think it would be fully understood that this needs to move on.
Another area to consider when thinking about communicating effectively is when you communicate and how often. Firstly, you should think about your executive and your colleagues as stakeholders within your personal business. What impact do they have on the success of your business, or in other words, your day-to-day work? How frequently should you communicate with them, and what communication channels will be the most effective way to get your message out to what is your market? Once you know how they like to communicate, you can adjust your frequency and style so that you can work productively together. And you won't be relying on one communication channel. You'll be using a variety of tools depending on the message that you want to convey. Now, this sounds great, doesn't it? I'm the boss of my own business, excellent. But I know it may be hard for you and your executive to even find the time to keep each other informed. And actually, this is where communication goals can be really helpful. It's so important to know how often your boss wants you to check in with them. Is it every day? Is it every week? Is it something more specific where it's a set time and that's when you go in? Do they want you to swing by, say, unannounced, or would they prefer, as I said, like a set structure, which is a regular and scheduled catch-up? People often have different expectations of frequency of communication. So on this one, you really actually need to sit down with your executive and find out what the answer is. And once you know the frequency, you can then plan ahead, either putting the details in their diary or in your diary. So even when it's a casual swing by, you know when that swing by is going to take place, because then you're going to meet your goals in terms of communication. You're their timekeepers. So make sure you try as often as you can to hit those communication goals. Remember that communication is a two-way street. Don't let your manager get away with vague instructions. This is so important because it's so easy for them to do. You're there to support them, so they actually might spend less time explaining what they need from you than they would do with any of your other colleagues. So a way to kind of deal with this is to always define the specifics back to your executive, either with a follow-up email or during the initial project conversation. With long-term tasks such as diary or email management, do the same thing. Define exactly how they want you to manage their correspondence and their calendar. If you haven't had those conversations, then literally after this summit, go and put a meeting in their diary and get that conversation completed. What you can actually say to them is, do you know what, I've just attended some training and I want to put some structure in place for us. And this really brings me back to my final point. It's this: never, never, never be afraid to communicate. And we're back full circle to my first point. You have every right to communicate with your executive. I don't care if they are the most senior person, you know, running a global business. Your job is to support them, and to do that, you need to be able to communicate with them. Communicating feedback on what is going on in your business environment is often an effective way for your boss to see a full picture of the company from someone else's perspective. So never hold back. If you have something to say, use your gut feeling and say it. Remember to talk to your executive about the work that you're doing that really excites you, that you're really passionate about. Executives are mostly, and I've obviously met some of them that are not, and I'm sure we all have, but mostly they're really passionate about their business and what's going on. So do talk with passion. Share your feedback and your experiences in the office, and make it clear that you are interested in everything that is going on and interested in your work. And that really is half the battle won.